From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham coming to you live from Washington, D.C. We have a number of riveting stories to delve into today from the United States and around the world. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. Tens of thousands of Israelis protest in Tel Aviv demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for failing to secure the return of hostages held captive by Hamas. North Korea says it successfully test-fired a ballistic missile capable of deploying multiple warheads. South Korea says the test was a failure as the missile exploded mid-air. In the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and opposition leader Keir Starmer duel over tax, immigration, and Brexit in their final debate as Britain prepares to vote in its general election on the 4th of July. A candidate in Iran's presidential election withdraws from the race just a day before the country goes to the polls. Iran announced the early election after the late President Ebrahim Raisi died in a helicopter crash on the 19th of May. And a scorching heat wave kills almost 600 people over 7 days in the Pakistani city of Karachi. This as the mercury soars past 104 degrees Fahrenheit. We began in the United States, where Israeli Defence Minister Yoav Gallant has just concluded his official visit to Washington, but not before warning that Israel's military is capable of sending Lebanon back to the Stone Age. These comments come as Lebanon-based Hezbollah continues to launch attacks on northern Israel. However, Gallant has stressed that his government prefers a diplomatic solution to the rising conflict. Now, throughout his visit, the Israeli defense minister discussed the need to resolve the security situation between Israel and Lebanon and asserted that Israel would not accept Hezbollah's military formations on the border. Notably, an exchange of hostilities has prompted the evacuation of tens of thousands of civilians on both sides, sparking fears of a full-blown war. Meanwhile, Gallant also laid out a three-level proposal to govern post-war Gaza that would include local Palestinians, regional partners, and the United States, but not Hamas or Israel.
We are committed to bringing the hostages home, with no exception. We are committed to defending our people. But let it be known that our war is not with the people of Gaza. Our war is not with the people of Lebanon. Our war is against Hamas, against Hezbollah, and their backers, the Iranian regime. We are committed, and I am personally committed, to facilitating the delivery of essential humanitarian aid to Gaza. We only fight those who seek to harm us. Together, let's move forward with strength and compassion. Thank you.
Now, this proposal comes as Secretary of State Antony Blinken repeatedly urged Israel to draft a post-war plan to avoid further chaos in Gaza. Meanwhile, Washington continues to pause the shipment of heavy bombs to Israel. However, smaller American weapons will continue to flow to Israel as the battles with Hamas and Hezbollah continue. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said that Washington is working towards a diplomatic agreement that would allow Israeli and Lebanese civilians to return to their homes on both sides of the border safely.
Hezbollah's provocations threaten to drag the Israeli and Lebanese people
into a war that they do not want. And such a war would be a catastrophe for Lebanon, and it would be devastating for innocent Israeli and Lebanese civilians. And so diplomacy is by far the best way to prevent more escalation. So we're urgently seeking a diplomatic agreement that restores lasting calm to Israel's northern border and enables civilians to return safely to their homes on both sides of the Israel-Lebanon border.
Now, with the U.S. and Israel trying to find diplomatic solutions for both conflicts, all eyes are now on Hamas and Hezbollah to see if they will also seek de-escalation to the growing crisis in the region. And in South America, a coup attempt failed in Bolivia's capital, La Paz, yesterday. Army General Juan Jose Zuniga ordered his troops to storm the presidential palace, vowing to restore democracy. However, the troops were quickly pulled back and the general was arrested. Bolivian President Luis Arce vowed to stand firm against the rebellion and named a new army commander who ordered the coup attempters to surrender.
Now in my capacity as Commander General of the Army and on behalf of the 3 force commanders, I order that all personnel who are mobilized in the streets must return to their units.
The rebellion ended after 3 hours as hundreds of supporters rushed to the presidential palace, waving flags, singing the national anthem, and cheering on the president.
They wanted to surprise us and surprise the Bolivian people. We have reacted, and the mobilized people have also allowed us to reverse this coup attempt today. Thank you, Bolivian people.
The coup-leading Army General had been stripped of his military command just a day prior to the attempted takeover. He even addressed reporters about growing anger against the government before ordering armored vehicles to take over the presidential palace. However, in a major twist, after Zuniga's arrest, the general said he was ordered by President Arce to stage the coup so he could make political inroads by gaining public sympathy. Now, the attempted coup was widely condemned among Latin American nations and even among different political parties within Bolivia.
Today we were shaking, but then we got together, all the Bolivian people. We're together and that has strengthened us. Today we're stronger than ever. They wanted to topple our president and make a coup, but the Bolivian people mobilized and didn't allow it.
Now, Bolivia has a history of political instability, including several military coups, as the 12 million strong nation struggles with a spiraling economic crisis. Tensions have been building in the landlocked country ahead of general elections next year, when left-wing former President Evo Morales is planning to run against the incumbent Arce. The political rivalry has paralyzed the government's effort to deal with the deepening economic despair, and now the international community is warning that the social unrest could explode in the historically turbulent nation. And returning to the United States, millions of Americans have been eagerly awaiting this very day. President Joe Biden and Donald Trump will take center stage at the CNN headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia this evening. The first televised debate of this year's presidential election is a rematch of 2020. However, this time, both President Biden and Donald Trump have to abide by some rather strict rules. With the Republicans' hush money conviction and the Democrats' age in focus, both candidates claim to have dirt on each other. American voters expect the debate to be centered around inflation, unemployment, and migration. Our next report gets you all the details.
The headquarters of CNN in Atlanta, Georgia, is gearing up for an epic showdown. The first debate in the U.S. presidential election is here. Joe Biden and Donald Trump will take the stage on Thursday, that is the 27th of June, and it will be a rematch of the 2020 presidential election. However, this time the face-off is different compared to previous presidential debates. The debate will begin at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The 90-minute showdown will include 2 commercial breaks. No props and pre-written notes will be allowed. The studio will not have any audience, a first in the history of US presidential debates. The microphone of the non-speaker will be kept on mute because the last time these two went head-to-head, Trump repeatedly interrupted Biden until the Democrat had to say this.
Will you shut up, man?
And this time, the first of the two debates will be hosted exclusively by CNN. Biden and Trump are the two oldest candidates ever to run for US presidency, and age has become a central issue. Trump has repeatedly questioned Biden's cognitive abilities.
Who likes Crooked Joe the best? Who likes Sleepy Joe the best? Crooked Joe? Sleepy Joe? Whoa! You know, that's the first time that Sleepy Joe has ever beaten Crooked Joe. It's the first.
Meanwhile, Biden calls Trump a dictator and a threat to American democracy.
When he was president, he separated families and children at the border. And now he's proposing to rip spouses and children from their families and homes and communities and place them in detention camps. He's actually saying these things. It's hard to believe it's being said, but he's actually saying these things out loud. And it's outrageous.
However, this time both Trump and Biden have dirt on each other. Biden will try to use the Republicans' hush money conviction in his favor. After all, Trump has become the first sitting or former president to be convicted of a felony. But Trump has been saying that the trial was Biden's political witch hunt and could turn the tide in his favor by playing the victim card.
It's a rigged system, and it's a terrible system, actually, but it's a rigged system, and I think we're doing very well. We had a big thing happen in Georgia today. You saw that? And step by step, this is a rigged situation. This is a situation where they go after a political opponent, and it all takes place from the White House and from the DOJ, including the state and city cases.
Meanwhile, Trump will try to get under Biden's skin by bringing up his eldest son, Hunter. Hunter Biden has become the first child of a sitting US president to be convicted as a felon. The election day is still 5 months away. And though the debates are historically not known to shape political opinion, this year portrays a different scenario. Millions of Americans who are sitting on the fence say that they will decide their leader based on the debates.
I mean, I'm definitely planning on watching it and kind of hearing from both sides, you know, how are they going to help the country and help the people and really kind of help make our decision easier for who to vote for.
It's something that everybody's really aware of, you know. Everybody's like, have you guys heard about the debate? You guys see 10th Street over here, they're closing that down. We've gotten the emails and stuff like that. So everybody on campus is pretty aware and pretty excited about, seeing what's going to go on in the next day.
American voters want Biden and Trump to stay away from personal attacks and speak on real issues like inflation, unemployment, abortion rights, and illegal migration.
Inflation, I think, is a very big problem for people, especially for senior citizens that are living on Social Security. I mean, prices are outrageous right now on so many things. People coming in illegally, we don't know if there's terrorists coming in or, they're not vetting people. They have no way of vetting these people that are just coming across the river into the country.
The debate on Thursday will be a landmark event in this year's presidential election. The second debate will be held in September, which would be too close to voting day on the 5th of November. So for Trump and Biden, the June debate is extremely crucial for tipping undecided voters in their favor.
Have you heard about the latest prank call pulled off by Russian pranksters? This time they managed to trick the UK's Foreign Secretary David Cameron by impersonating a former Ukrainian president. Reports from London's Foreign Office confirmed that the call lasted nearly 15 minutes, during which Secretary Cameron discussed sensitive topics related to Ukraine, including a private dinner he had with none other than Donald Trump back in April. But that's not all. Secretary Cameron also revealed that he in fact lobbied the U.S. presidential candidate to support military aid for Ukraine, emphasizing the extent of Vladimir Putin's ambitions. Additionally, the British Foreign Secretary boldly declared that Ukraine would not receive an invitation to join NATO due to strong opposition from Washington. He also raised doubts about France's proposal to send troops to Ukraine, warning that they could end up being targeted by Russian military. He even mentioned a conversation with the foreign minister of Kazakhstan, who expressed deep worries about Russia's potential interest in a region where many ethnic Russians live. But this isn't the first time a leader has fallen victim to these pranksters. Vovan and Lexus, known by their aliases, have been pulling off elaborate hoaxes for years now, pretending to be world leaders or high-ranking officials and fooling everyone from politicians to celebrities. Their tricks have caused major international incidents, prompting high-level government investigations and raising fears of intelligence breaches. The duo's previous audacious run was in 2023, when they successfully placed a call to the Italian Prime Minister. During that conversation, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni candidly shared her thoughts on the Ukraine war and addressed her frustration with the influx of migrants. The Russian pranksters have also gotten Prince Harry and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson to spill some secrets. These calls surely prove that the audacity and success of these hoaxes are truly astounding and a major concern for Europe's intelligence bureaus. And finally, in Denmark, something big is brewing on the Danish grasslands, and it involves the country's most famous residents, cows. Denmark's government has decided to make cows pay for their gaseous contributions to climate change. Dairy farmers will soon face an annual tax of almost $100 per cow for the planet heating emissions they emit. Here's our final report that explains.
Denmark, known for its love of bacon and butter, has decided that its cattle is partying too hard on the planet's expense. With agriculture being the country's top source of emissions, the government has decided to crack down on the real culprits, the cows. Ever thought you'd see the day when cows get taxed? In a world first, Denmark has decided to make their dairy cows cough up for their burps. Starting in 2030, Danish dairy farmers will face an annual tax of $96 per cow in a bid to curb the planet-heating emissions they generate. In a landmark move for environmental policy, Denmark's coalition government has agreed to implement the world's first carbon emissions tax on agriculture.
Yeah, so far there is no other countries that have introduced a tax on the non-energetic related emissions in the agricultural sector, so they're going to be a front runner if they do this. But of course there is a discussion at the EU level to have a quota market for these kinds of emissions. That is currently halt, but perhaps that will be in the future. But we're going to be a front runner if we proceed with this.
In the first 2 years, the proceeds from the tax will support the agricultural industry's green transition. Experts say the whole purpose of this tax is to get the sector to look for solutions to reduce emissions.
The purpose of the target is to give a strong price signal to farmers. So if they want to avoid the target and reduce their emissions, there is a gain, and that is that they don't have to pay the tax. So the tax is a price signal that the farmers can use to say, okay, should I invest in green technology to get rid of the emissions, or should I pay the tax and then I have a higher cost, and the cost will reflect sort of the societal cost of having polluting production.
The Danish dairy industry has largely supported the agreement, recognizing the need for climate action. However, it wasn't necessarily the change they wanted. This discontent echoes recent protests across Europe, where farmers have been demonstrating against environmental regulations. The global food system is a significant contributor to climate crisis. It's responsible for about a third of greenhouse gas emissions. Livestock, especially cows, are like methane-producing machines. They produce around 12% of global emissions through their burps and manure. Denmark is a major exporter of dairy and pork, and the country's agriculture sector is the largest source of greenhouse emissions. The new tax is a part of a broader initiative to transform the Danish landscape and meet ambitious climate goals. The government has also committed to investing a whopping $3.7 billion in environmental measures, including reforestation and creation of wetlands.
There is a lot of different sources that emit carbon dioxide. And so you can, if you want to free the agricultural sector, then you have to find it elsewhere. And that is becoming increasingly difficult. The estimate is that in 2030, 46% of the Danish emission is going to be from the agricultural sector, the non-energy related emissions from the agricultural sector. So something has to be done to reduce the emissions.
Denmark's decision to introduce a cow tax might seem like a bunch of bull, but it also highlights the urgent need to tackle agricultural emissions. As the world watches this moving story, it looks like the stage is being set for a new era of climate policy. For now, the Danish cows might want to keep their heads down and their burps to themselves.
That's all we have time for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.